About 40 to 60% of the population has at least one MTHFR gene variant. That doesn't mean that they'll automatically have some of the issues that we'll probably talk about in this podcast that are related to MTHFR. It is possible to go through your life and never know that you had the gene variant and be really healthy. It does affect a large percentage of the population. And when you understand what MTHFR does and the role that methylation plays in mental and physical health, you start to understand why people are getting treated for anxiety or depression, that some medications don't work for them.
Mainstream mental health is flawed, and I'm pulling back the curtain. I'm Andrea Clark, a former family therapist who walked away from the system to expose the truth. After my own journey from medication maze to holistic healing, I'm here to challenge the status quo and reveal the mental health truths most people don't know. The truth about mental health is your radical roadmap to wellness. Raw stories, expert insights, breakthrough solutions. This is where traditional modalities end and real healing begins. Tom Nikkola is a veteran in the health and fitness industry with over 23 years of experience. He spent more than a decade at Lifetime, where he led their nutrition, lab testing, and supplement businesses. He's helped educate thousands of personal trainers. Since then, he's built a thriving online business through Vigor Training, offering science-based health guides and one-on-one consulting. Tom is known for making complex health topics easy to understand and for helping people get stronger, leaner, and healthier, especially those dealing with stress, hormone issues, or genetic roadblocks like MTHFR. He also mentors other fitness professionals to grow smarter, more successful businesses rooted in integrity and results. And I learned an insane amount of information from him during the course of this interview. And I absolutely cannot wait for us to dive into this. Hi, Tom. Welcome.
Hi, Andrea. Thank you.
I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today. I think it's going to be so powerful for so many people.
Me too.
So before we dive into like the really juicy stuff about, gene mutations and methylation challenges, can you share a little bit about your journey to getting here, where you're so passionate about educating about this particular thing?
Yeah. My degree is pre-med biology. I was actually going to school, planning to do medical school. And then my senior year of college, decided that I wanted to be in the more proactive health side of things than actually treating people. So shortly after college, I started as a personal trainer for Lifetime, which is a huge organization of fitness clubs across mostly the United States, a little bit of Canada. I started out as a personal trainer back in 2001. And about 6 years later, I was at the corporate office running lab testing, metabolic testing, fitness devices, nutrition services, weight loss. There were at the time like 56 dietitians that were part of the program, one of the programs that I was responsible for. And so my interest and passion for health beyond just exercise and macronutrients was kind of brought to life through all of those programs that I was responsible for. But then as it relates to like MTHFR and genetics, I really started paying attention when I had to revise the nutritional products line. This was like 15, 16, 17 years ago. The supplements at the time had folic acid in them. And probably almost every nutritional supplement used synthetic folic acid, but we were going to make a change. We were working with a group that was much more advanced when it came to nutrition and genetics and nutritional supplements. And so we were putting methylated B vitamins into the multivitamin formula as we were formulating it. That got into the conversation around MTHFR, which at the time, most people had never heard of it. They didn't know that most people can't metabolize synthetic folic acid very well, in which case they're not actually getting the folate into their system like they're expecting they are based on the supplement they're taking. In some cases, it's actually detrimental. It can build up in people's systems as unmetabolized folic acid. But that was, like I said, 15, 16, 17 years ago when we were going through that project. And then over the ensuing probably 10 years, I'd bring it up when I would talk about supplements, like make sure you're using methylated B vitamins or an alternative form that's bioavailable. But very few people were talking about MTHFR, even fewer talking about other genes that I'm sure we'll end up talking about. And really over the last probably 3 to 5 years, as I've worked with clients one-on-one online, because I have my own business. I'm not I don't work for Lifetime or corporate fitness anymore. People have started asking about it. They're paying attention. They're open to the conversation, and they're starting to understand the role that genetic variants can have in our health, in why they don't respond to nutritional supplements, to diets, to exercise programs the way that their friends do or the way that they're told they're supposed to. And what I've really found, again, just over these past couple of years now, is that people are feeling some relief knowing that there's finally people who are understanding the challenges that they've faced, because when they've talked with their doctors in the past about the symptoms they're dealing with, about how they react weird to protocols and supplements and things. The word that comes up all the time from clients is they feel like they were gaslit by other practitioners. And so it's been one, really exciting to see how people are feeling heard, but number two, they're actually starting to feel better because they're not getting the cookie cutter answers that they've been getting for the past, 10, 20, 30 years from other practitioners that they've worked with, and having some breakthroughs in how they're feeling and things. So that's kind of the quick summary of my almost 24 year career in health and fitness. It's now it seems like people are finally being heard related to the symptoms they've been dealing with for much of their life.
Absolutely. It's starting to trend, right? Way on social media. And as more information and, the availability of tests and things like that are coming out, I've noticed a huge, and obviously the algorithm feeds us what we look for, but I've noticed way more people openly talking about it, educating about it, educating on how to take it into consideration, whether it's tested or not, all sorts of things, which I think is really powerful. It's really interesting because about what you said when it comes to practitioners. So I took my daughter's, we all got, we got tested as a family, and I took my daughter's results to her pediatrician. And her pediatrician's really cool because she's open to learning. She doesn't just shut you down, but it was really interesting. She's didn't have any clue what any of it was. And so I explained it to her. And of course, I was so grateful she was open because I was looking for very specific blood tests. On a book I had read about testing for over or under methylation, all these things, right? And she was open to it, which I was so grateful for because we need doctors sometimes for certain things. Right? They're the gateway to certain tests or certain whatever. Especially specialized tests. And so, but it was interesting because she had no idea what any of it is. And most practitioners, unless they're in the functional medicine space or the holistic, right? And they're educating themselves, most conventional doctors don't. And even my practitioner, he's pretty holistic in nature and fairly well-rounded, but he, we had a discussion about some things with hormones, and he's he really kind of struggled to understand how my methylation challenges could be affecting estrogen dominance. So it's just interesting because it's such an important thing and not everyone is caught up yet, right?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So with that being said, right, with not all of our practitioners being caught up, let's talk a little bit about how somebody can educate themselves and come into awareness, because isn't it a pretty significant population who struggles with methylation issues?
Yeah, about 40 to 60% of the population has at least one MTHFR gene variant. That doesn't mean that they'll automatically have some of the issues that we'll probably talk about in this podcast that are related to MTHFR. I mean, it is possible to go through your life and never know that you had the gene variant and be really healthy. But in all likelihood, that's because you're probably eating well. Maybe you're getting enough quality folate and other micronutrients. So it does affect a large percentage of the population. And it it also, like when you understand what MTHFR does and the role that methylation plays in mental and physical health, you start to understand why in some cases, if people are getting treated for anxiety or depression or any number of other more neurological challenges, that some medications don't work for them. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they're unnecessary because the issue isn't necessarily in the brain. Sometimes it's in the gut. Sometimes it's in the methylation itself. And so when you understand what methylation and MTHFR really means, and then you look at some of the challenges that you may face, it can be really empowering because sometimes the solution really is as simple as a few modifications to your nutrition and you can feel significantly better. And in other cases, that gets you started, and then there's other stuff that you have to deal with. So I don't want anybody to ever feel like once they identify that they have an MTHFR mutation or both mutations, that is the only reason or the root cause, which is a phrase that's used so often, of what they're dealing with. It's a part of the issue, and having MTHFR tends to amplify the negative choices that we might make with our diet, lifestyle, exercise, sleep, that kind of thing.
Okay, so let's get into what MTHFR is and what why is methylation so important for maybe the person who's never really even heard of this or they have just come across.
Yeah, sure. So MTHFR is an enzyme that helps in the conversion of folate into methylfolate. And in essence, like the majority of, call it retail supplements and processed foods, use a very cheap form of B9, which is synthetic folic acid. Mm-hmm. I do think, I'm not one to think there was an ulterior motive way back. And I think it was in the 80s when foods in the United States were supposed to be fortified with synthetic folic acid. It's cheaper to put that in foods than the bioavailable form of it. So, that sometimes comes up. I just thought that was worth mentioning that we've been exposed to synthetic folic acid a lot more over the last, say, 40 years or so than we were prior to that because of it, putting it into fortified foods. The reason for that ultimately was that if women, when they're pregnant, are deficient in folate, it can lead to a number of birth defects, spina bifida being one of them. And so the goal of making sure that the U.S. population, and many other countries have done this too on different timelines, but in the U.S., that women were not short on folate. That was the whole point of fortifying foods with this B9. Unfortunately, when people, again, 40 to 60% of the population have MTHFR mutations or variants, they're not going to be able to convert that synthetic folic acid well into folate. So you could be taking a whole bunch of it and consuming a whole bunch of it through processed foods and still end up with inadequate levels of bioavailable folate in your system. Mm-hmm. So again, going back to the question of what is MTHFR, though, it's just an enzyme that helps with the conversion of B9 into methylfolate so that your body can use it for a process called methylation. Methylation is something it's involved in just about every physiological process in the body. I mean, there's some that it's not included in, but the vast majority of them. It's involved in turning genes on and off, and it's involved in detoxification, neurotransmitter production, which of course is a key factor in mental health, supporting hormones, and it has connections to cardiovascular risk factors, to blood clotting, to gut health. So having the variant and not getting enough folate in your diet can lead to a whole bunch of problems. But it isn't necessarily just the fact that you're low in folate. It's the fact that when you're low in folate, you don't methylate well. When you don't methylate well, you end up screwing up a whole bunch of physiological processes necessary to thrive.
Yes. And detoxification is, I mean, all of them are huge, but detoxification is so important.
Correct. Yep.
This is very interesting. So let's talk about how that can really show up in our mental health.
Sure.
We think we have a mental health disorder, but really we're not properly. Right?
Yeah. There's a couple of ways it plays a role. So when we talk about MTHFR mutations, variants, polymorphisms, there's two variants that people can have. One is 677T. The other is A1298C. I wrote those down. I was looking at my notes because I sometimes mix the numbers up when I'm talking out loud, but those are the two main variants that people will have. Now, as soon as I say that, I would imagine some of your listeners are thinking, oh, maybe I should get tested. There is value in testing. I've been tested, as you were talking about before we got started, you've been tested. But if you're dealing with some of the issues that we'll talk about, I don't think that the first step is necessarily to get testing done. It's just to do some of the simple things that we'll talk about with supplementation, diet, exercise, that kind of thing. So we'll get there. But if right away you're thinking, oh, I got to find out which of these variants I have, you might not need to. You might be able to just start feeling a whole lot better just with some simple changes we'll get to in a little bit. So with that said, C677T, that one is involved in homocysteine, which is an inflammatory marker. It's whereas the other one, and then not just homocysteine. I mean, there's other stuff we'll talk about, but primarily that one is more of a cardiovascular issue. The other variant, again, 1298C, is more related to neurological and mood-related issues. The reason I want to differentiate those is that when people have two of the 12C variants, it is more challenging for them to maintain normal neurological function or healthy neurological function, or however you want to phrase it. They're going to be more susceptible to anxiety or depression, OCD, bipolar. There's a whole bunch of different neurological conditions that people who have that, especially two of those variants, can display if they're not supporting their folate levels and doing some of the things that we'll talk about. So that doesn't mean that someone who has the other variants, the 677, is not going to have anxiety or depression or OCD. It's just more likely in those with the 1298. So if you go down the path of getting tested, you find out you have one or two of the 1298, it's going to be more likely that you'll have trouble with the neurological and mood issues. And the reason for that is that those variants significantly slow down the production of neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, and GABA. The other thing is that the majority of those neurotransmitters that I just mentioned, dopamine, GABA, and serotonin, are produced in the gut. And when people have MTHFR variants, they tend to also they're more likely to have gut issues. You mentioned detoxification because they're not detoxifying well. It's more likely that they're going to run into issues like dysbiosis and SIBO and some of the other overgrowth issues of bad bacteria in the gut. And when that happens, they're not going to be producing as much of those neurotransmitters in the gut either. So it's kind of a double whammy because you have a reduction in the ability to produce them just because methylation is challenged. And if somebody's got a dysfunctional gut, they're also not producing those neurotransmitters at the levels they should through the gut. I mean, I see this frequently. I would say the majority of clients that I work with who have MTHFR variants and have some of the cognitive related issues usually shows up as anxiety and gut dysfunction. And those two just kind of go hand in hand.
Which makes sense because, like, how can we, and I don't know if I'm kind of throwing you off with this question, probably not, but how does this all also connect to our nervous system?
Well, great question. So one of the other issues with MTHFR is that you do have a reduction in your resilience to stress, your capacity for handling stress. It doesn't mean that if you have MTHFR, you should go find an island to live on and, stay away from stress. You have to live, eat, and exercise in a way that supports a stronger resilience to stress. If you're not strength training and you're not eating enough protein and you're not getting enough sleep, I mean, all of those just weaken your ability to handle stress. And, that's just going to exacerbate the problem by itself. So, I mean, that would be the connection is just knowing if I have MTHFR issues, if you look back at your history and like, my friends do Orange Theory or CrossFit or they train hard and I can't keep up with them. I feel fatigued. I do my workouts and I feel wrecked in the afternoon. I have a minor scuffle with my spouse and I feel completely wiped out for days on end. Well, that could be related to the fact that you've got MTHFR variants. You have a reduced capacity for handling stress. So those are what I just said is just, examples of what clients have told me as they've been working with me just over the past couple of weeks.
So I want to take us on a detour for a second. I do want to make sure that we share some like basic lifestyle changes, whether people get tested or not. But I'm curious about, because there's other gene mutations, right? Or methylation genes.
Correct.
And another one that's starting to be more known, but is less known than MTHFR is the COMT gene.
Yes.
And there's like a bunch, the genetic tests that I got was like, holy smokes. And they're clearly all important, but do you have a knowledge base on COMT? Can we like touch on that for a second?
Yeah, absolutely. So COMT affects your clearance of catecholamines. So compounds that you release in response to stress.
Yeah.
And so everyone has either VAL, and again, there's numbers and letters. None of that's
We're
really
getting
important.
into the weeds a little bit, but that's okay.
Yeah, we keep it as simple as possible. So on one extreme, you have the MET variant, which is a slow COMT variant. You have a hard time clearing catecholamines. You have, in essence, it takes you longer to recover from stress, physical or mental stress.
Yeah.
At the other extreme, you have fast COMT, in which case you can clear catecholamines quickly. So the way this shows up, for example, is the people with fast COMT can generally drink a ton of coffee. They'll drink it all day long, no problem. Doesn't bother them. They can do other stimulants, doesn't bother them. They can get yelled at by their boss. They can get into an argument. They can get into some kind of a physical or mental fight. And then an hour later, they just seem fine. They're not rattled by it. They overcome stress quickly. The downside of it is that those who have the fast COMT usually need the coffee just to be able to get through the day, because they need constant dopamine hits. They need constant stimulation. They're more prone to depression. On the other side, the slow COMT people tend to be more susceptible to anxiety. They have a harder time handling stressful events. They don't handle coffee very well. And interestingly, this is where it goes back to MTHFR. They also can over-methylate easily. Going back to MTHFR, one of the recommendations when you have the variant is to use methylated B vitamins. So folate is a B vitamin. It's vitamin B9. You also need B12, B6. B12 and B9 ideally would be methylated. So you have methylfolate and methylcobalamin. You'll see that in good quality multivitamins. Those forms of those B vitamins deliver methyl groups to make up for the fact that as someone with MTHFR, you need more methylation support.
Yeah.
However, for people with MTHFR who are taking those methylated B vitamins, if they also have slow COMT, they're more prone to overmethylation. It's easy to end up getting too many methyl groups into their system at one time because they're slower to clear them from their system. And so where this becomes really quickly problematic is someone will find out they have MTHFR, they'll start taking methylated B vitamins, and within an hour or two of the first few days they're using them, so they take their supplements, and then an hour later they're feeling anxious, irritable, short-tempered, tense. And there's like this immediate, almost just some will describe it as almost like they're raging inside kind of feeling. And that's an indicator that they're over methylating. So chances are that person who's feeling that way has slow COMT. That's the most, like, again, with my clients, that's the most common frustration that people who thought they were doing the right thing with MTHFR experience, because now they think they're doing the right thing and then they end up feeling worse than they did before. And there's other forms of B vitamins. We can get into that at some point, but I wanted to make the connection between COMT and MTHFR and just say, there's the, hey, try methylated B vitamins. If you don't respond well to them, there's alternative forms to it. But the one other thing that's interesting with COMT is it also affects your detoxification of especially estrogens. So someone who has slow COMT is also going to be more likely to experience estrogen dominance. So women may, like if they're thinking about doing their perimenopause, they're thinking about getting on hormone replacement therapy, which I'm generally a huge advocate for. If they don't understand that they have trouble clearing estrogens because they don't know they have slow COMT and their doctor is not looking at it, they may feel worse using hormone replacement therapy because they're not taking action to help clear the estrogens. They're not getting enough fiber in their diet, making sure their gut health is in a good spot, using supplements like DIM or calcium D-glucarate. So I wanted to just quickly touch on how those are connected without hopefully confusing listeners as well, because it can get
it can get a little crazy, but I think this is so important because essentially you just described my journey the last forever, and especially the last couple of years being in perimenopause, and I was raw dogging it, white knuckling it, trying to figure out my way. And if I would have known some of these things before, maybe I wouldn't have had some of the unfortunate obstacles, right, that I've had. And it is what it is, and that's okay. That's part of why I have this podcast. But a lot of what you've described, because I have a COMT variant and I think 2 MTHFR variants. I can't remember specifically which ones at this moment, but definitely have experienced estrogen dominance, right? Definitely makes sense why I've had the sleep issues I've had my entire life, no matter what I do, right? Anxiety that doesn't make sense because I'm not really scared of things, from a actual cognitive person. I'm not actually scared of stuff. It's more of a body anxiety.
Yep.
So just I'm what in the heck? I have my life together. What's the problem? And it's, I feel that people need to hear about this and do some research, and whether they get tested or not, that's fine. But it's just look for some of the things, right? And look at some common threads in your health, especially if you haven't figured out how to get anything resolved and you've done a gajillion things. In my opinion, then this would be a really important step in all of that. Yep. Based on my own journey, if you will.
Yep, 100%. Totally agree.
Okay, so thank you for explaining that, because it can be very complex and overwhelming. Anxiety, mood swings, brain fog, hormonal chaos. Before you blame stress or just being a woman, have you checked your mineral levels? Minerals are the foundation of your mental health and hormones. Magnesium, zinc, copper, and iron control everything from your mood and energy to your cycle and stress response. But most women are walking around depleted, and they don't even know it. Here's the truth. Birth control, stress, and even pregnancy can drain your minerals, leaving you feeling anxious, exhausted, and out of balance. But no one's testing for it. When I got tested, I found several key minerals were significantly out of balance, even though I eat well and I take excellent care of myself. It was a wake-up call that changed everything for me and my health. You don't need to just deal with it. You need to get balanced. A simple at-home mineral test can give you real answers, so you can stop guessing and start healing at the root. Check out hormonehealingrd.com and use code MHM20 for $20 off your test today. You can also check the show notes for links and codes. I am curious then, where do you help people start? Most people want to get, I'm that same way. I'm yeah, I know now. Let's just rip the Band-Aid off and just pour it with all of the gasoline to fix it, right? And that's not always the best way. That can actually be more harmful. So how do you help people in stages work through this? Yeah,
good question. So first is to understand that MTHFR is like we've said already, it's pretty common, 40 to 60% of the population. I've been in some Facebook groups that people have pointed me to just to check them out, and other online platforms where I hear people talking about MTHFR with this very dire, I was dying. It's almost like that's this chronic disease that they, in the way that they're describing having MTHFR. And it's, in reality, it's just your unique genetic makeup. And there's people that are, in the 1% of the 1% of the 1% in terms of their health who have MTHFR variants, just as there are those same healthy people that don't have the variant. So you can learn to manage it, but learning to manage it for some people means you're going to do a little bit of trial and error, and there may be more error in the beginning than there is the stuff that works. So like when I'm working with a client, we'll make a limited number of changes at any given time. It's usually like 6 to 8 weeks. We'll make a couple tweaks to their nutrition, introduce a couple of new supplements, maybe, and then, do one new thing with exercise, see how they respond to it. Mm-hmm. And then over time, add things in. I'm not a fan of the shotgun approach, which I've had so many clients who I've met with, and they're like, I met with this practitioner. They went through my genes with me. I walked out with 30 different supplements, and I got home and I was so overwhelmed that I never even got started with any of them. Yeah. So it may be that all of those 30 supplements were actually going to be helpful for that person, but you don't know which ones are helping if you're trying everything all at once.
Yeah.
The only time, just as a sidebar, the only time that I'm an advocate for the shotgun approach is when you just went through surgery or you had a major injury. So as an example, I broke my neck mountain biking 3 years ago and fractured a couple vertebrae, had a bad spinal cord injury. Wow. Starting that next day, we were figuring out what peptides and supplements and alternative therapies and acupuncture and chiropractic that I could be doing as quickly as possible, knowing that maybe 25% of it was going to be effective, but we didn't know which 25%. That's a time when you can throw everything at it. But when it comes to dealing with any of these genetic variants, just being methodical, taking your time, if let's say that a listener is 40 years old and you've been dealing with this for 20 years, if you get a little bit better each month for the next 20 months, that's a short timeline compared to how long you've been dealing with it. So be okay with taking your time and being methodical about the approach. Not trying every supplement that you've heard can be helpful for, whatever it is that you're facing right now. So going back to, getting people started, like when somebody says, I have this MTHFR variant, maybe you have a couple of other gene variants because you did do testing, but we find out that your biggest issue is actually sleep. Yeah. Like that is the thing that we're going to address first, because it doesn't matter if you have all perfect genes. If you're not getting enough sleep, you're going to destroy your health. And so it may be the MTHFR may be the new and exciting thing that you want to focus on. But the reality is we need to get you sleeping better in order to improve your health. Or it may be the fact that you're definitely not getting enough protein in your diet, or you're not doing resistance training. Like those three are really the foundation of my programming recommendations. And then we build on it from there.
Well, sleep makes total sense. It's like the key to everything. Yeah. But can you explain why those are the three foundations of your program?
Yeah, absolutely. So sleep, obviously that's going to affect neurotransmitter production, hormone production. When you're getting enough sleep, your growth hormone levels, are secreted primarily during deep sleep. So that's a huge factor in longevity, recovery from physical and mental stressors. Protein is absolutely essential, not just for building muscle, but for maintaining a normal blood sugar level, for enhancing satiety, pushing out other foods that might not be as healthy, or crowding out was a word that I was trying to think of. As you're eating, if somebody eats a higher protein meal and they eat their protein first, they tend to eat less carbohydrate and less fat. Mm-hmm. And so they're generally going to be eating more nutritiously, as well as end up eating fewer total calories during the day. But beyond that, protein's a necessity for neurotransmitter production, for a strong immune system, for healthy bones, and of course, muscle mass as well. I don't know what the percent, I should have asked before we started, like what's the percentage of your listeners that are men versus women? For my followers on Instagram and my clients, it's like 90% women. And maintaining muscle mass as you age is the number one factor in longevity, more than how much body fat you're carrying or anything else. It's how much muscle mass do you have. So protein is how you'd help to maintain that throughout your life. And then of course, strength training is the trigger that gives your body a reason to build and maintain the muscle to begin with. So from an exercise standpoint, that's important, but also from a nervous system standpoint, like traditional resistance training where you do a set and you take a rest, you do a set, you take a rest. If any of your listeners are clients of mine, they've heard me tell this story because I tell it to almost everyone. When you do resistance training, as you're exercising, you're putting your body in a sympathetic state as it tries to overcome the resistance of that of that movement and the weight that you're trying to push around. Well, when you stop and you rest before you do your next set, you need to get into a parasympathetic state so that you can recover from that exercise. So what you're doing is you're training your body to shift back and forth between a sympathetic state and a parasympathetic state efficiently over the course of a 45 to 60 minute workout. Most of your time spent is actually in a parasympathetic rest and recover state as opposed to a sympathetic. Contrast that with a group fitness class, boot camp, Orange Theory, CrossFit, where you're going all out for 40 to 60 minutes in a real hardcore sympathetic state. And it's no wonder that people feel so wiped out the rest of the day. And they also don't improve their resilience to stress as well from that kind of activity as they do with traditional strength training. So that's trying to summarize those three, as efficiently as possible. That's why they're so important. Does that mean that each client that I would see, I'd recommend they start with strength training? Absolutely not. Because if you're not sleeping well and you're under a high level of stress and your resilience to stress is just completely shot, I don't recommend going to the gym. It might just start with walking and moving a little bit or doing a set of squats and a set of push-ups on your stairs at home. And call that a workout for a little while. So there are definitely levels to it. And I don't want anyone to think that they have to go to the gym and do a 45-minute workout tomorrow. But that is kind of the ultimate goal, is to be able to build up your capacity to do that, because it'll directly affect your mental health, just like it will affect your physical health.
That's, through interviewing so many people at this point, one of the common threads is these very foundational things, no matter what the condition is, the hormones, mental health, like methylation, detoxification. It's these fundamental behaviors and habits. And it's so hard because we live in such a time where people really want to bypass us. And I'm guilty of that too. I'm guilty of it too. So where we just want to bypass these fundamentals, and it's like we can't get around it, right?
Yep. My worst performing posts on social media in terms of people engaging with them and sharing them or doing anything with them are about protein, sleep, and strength training. The three things that they need the most. But if I do a post about the latest supplement, because it seems quick and easy and new, it'll take off like crazy. And that's not to say that there isn't stuff that's important and good to know, but unfortunately, those three things don't get a lot of attention or interest from people.
It's almost like an eye roll thing at this point, right?
Yeah.
And it's so crazy because we're all pretty intelligent for the most part. And it's like these are the building blocks to your health, your longevity. Everything else builds off of that. And I understand why we get to this place. Like for me, sleep has always been a struggle. I've learned that I'm more sensitive to stress through this genetic, a lot of my life makes sense now.
Right.
And so I've had to do some other things to make sure that my sleep is protected. And it takes a lot of self-discipline for me to protect my sleep hygiene. It's almost like the first thing that goes when I'm on a deadline or there's stress going on in my life. Like it's the easiest thing for me to stop protecting.
Yeah.
But it's like the most important thing that I should be protecting.
Right. Without question.
So I get it, but it's just, when I'm sleeping well, I feel like I can rule the world. I feel like I can rule the world. It's crazy. And so I just really want to emphasize these three things because I know they seem really unsexy, but it's it's the most sexy thing you can do for your health, right?
Yeah. And I'm human like anyone else. I know there are people who enjoy going to the gym. Like they legitimately, it's the highlight of their day. I can think of dozens of other things that I'd rather be doing with that same amount of time that are far more fun, but I will show up and I will do it consistently. And I say that as someone who has taught and trained and coached and stuff now for, again, 24 years. I don't particularly enjoy working out. I enjoy the benefits of it. But I am also human. And I know that if I ever talk myself into stopping for a week, it will probably become a month and it'll become a year. And so the thing with exercise is that you just can't stop no matter what you have going on. And I hold myself to that, which is why I mentioned breaking my neck. I broke my neck on a Saturday, had emergency surgery that day, have 3 vertebrae that are fused. It was really bad. I could have easily been a quadriplegic, but fortunately, I was able to walk. I was able to walk within 48 hours again. I got out of the hospital 3 days later. So it would have been, I think I got out of the hospital. It was either a Monday or a Tuesday. And I called up a friend that I had started personal training with back in the early 2000s. His name is Victor. I called him up, told him what happened. I said, would you meet me at the gym on Thursday and help me work out? So I'm going to call her. I mean, obviously my neck was pretty fragile at that point. You have to be smart about this. But I was back in the gym 5 days after I broke my neck because I knew if I waited for a week or 2 or 3 and just said, well, I just broke my neck, I can't work out, that I'd start finding excuses to not work out the longer that I stayed out of the gym. So if I can get in there after just breaking my neck, there's probably very few excuses somebody can come up with for not doing some kind of physical activity and just staying in the habit of it. So I'll put that out there just in case somebody is telling themselves, I can't because I have a bad knee. I can't because I have a bad back. I can't because I'm tired. I can't be. You can. You just have to get in and do it. So
this is something really powerful that I want to kind of side tangent on for a second, because there was a period of time where I didn't really work out very much because I had a neck and shoulder injury from a car accident. And every time I tried to work out, which to be honest, I wasn't working out correctly at the time. So that was part of it. It would flare and I'd be in this pain. So I know people have a lot of fear, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe somebody has chronic pain and joint issues or whatever, they've trauma to the body. There's people who have this fear of re-injuring themselves or creating more pain. What would you say to people like that? And maybe let's just assume they have limited resources. So maybe they don't have somebody in their life that can meet them and help them do it properly. What would you say to somebody like that? Where could they start to where they're not pushing it too hard, but they're starting to build up the resilience over time? Because that's what I did is I finally got a program that was really built for me as a, a female, and then also helped me work my way slowly to strengthening this before I was trying to lift super heavy upper body. So what would you say to people like that?
Well, as far as getting guidance, there's so much that's available for free nowadays. There is value in working with people, certainly. I see multiple clients every day because I feel like I can deliver a better service than ChatGPT and all of the stuff that we have available to us. That said, if you're not doing anything right now, ChatGPT, if you just tell it the limitations that you have, can probably put together a pretty good starter program for you and can act as your trainer for a while until you get into a place where maybe you can afford a professional or you can get to the gym or whatever. But there's very little in today's world that we can't get answers to if we just use a platform like ChatGPT or look for it on YouTube or, any number of free stuff that's available online. Is it as good as paying for somebody? No, of course not. But it's better than not doing anything for sure. And when it comes to the fear of getting hurt again, it's possible that you could. Every time that I exercised right after breaking my neck, I thought, could this make things worse?
Yeah.
It's a possibility. But the fact that I'm moving just after injury is also reducing the chance that I'm going to be in pain a year from now because it's getting my body to move the way that it should. It's reducing scar tissue. So if that knee or neck or back hurts when you're exercising, you could modify the way that you're exercising. But maybe in the short term, going through a little bit of that pain and stiffness to get your body moving again is going to result in less pain and irritation down the road. And the only way to get through it is to deal with a little bit of discomfort. So there will be pain, whether that pain is the upfront, getting back into exercising and dealing with some of that soreness and stiffness, or the pain of being even more immobile a year from now than you are today. There's a trade-off. The benefit of dealing with the pain in the short term and getting back to being physically fit is going to make your quality of life a whole lot better. And in terms of mental health, there's no doubt that when we move better, we feel better. When we move more, we feel better.
Yeah. It's something I have found is just like the moving your body, releasing that pent up tension and energy alone, not even including like all the actual benefits hormonally and neurologically, but it's just like, just release. I mean, we just sit, we're, under fluorescent light. There's so much, the stress. And so even just a simple walk or dancing in your house, right? Like just releasing the energy. And I actually started with walking like once I realized, Andrea, you're like you're getting crazy, trying to bypass, right?
Yeah.
I like to go slow. Like I'm like a shotgunner. I'm learning that's mostly not always wise. But so I was like, okay, just reel it in. And I started walking, and that was really powerful for me. And then I started doing more like core type of training, like bar Pilates for a while to strengthen just my general core body. Yeah. And then I was able to graduate to lifting and lifting pretty heavy, like, 4 to 5 days a week. So, but I had to be patient with myself and not be so frustrated with myself and my perceived limitations at the time. Right. And I think that's also why people just want like the supplement or the injection. And there's no judgment, but I think it's like the journey can be uncomfortable, right? Of like the discipline and only getting incremental results. And I know for me, that's sometimes why I want to like, okay, what's the latest supplement, right? Is because it's like I get impatient and it's painful for me to not feel like I'm being successful in some way that I'm trying, like a health goal I'm trying to achieve or something.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, the walking, the movement, the, hopping on a small trampoline, those kinds of just small movements throughout the day can be important first steps in getting people physically active and then physically fit again. And kind of going back to MTHFR and some of the mental challenges that you face if somebody has just had the epiphany that, oh my gosh, MTHFR could be part of the issue that I'm dealing with anxiety or depression or OCD or ADHD, like some of these neurological challenges. You can definitely start using the appropriate supplements like a multivitamin with methylated B vitamins in it. Or if that doesn't work for you, folinic acid or hydroxycobalamin, omega-3s, magnesium, vitamin D, like those are just good staple supplements. But then in addition to that, eating more protein and starting to exercise and working on your gut health, what you find is that you are supporting your ability to produce neurotransmitters when your nutrition improves, because now you don't have these methylation gaps that you had before. As your gut health improves, now you're able to produce more of those neurotransmitters via the gut, dopamine, serotonin, and GABA. And then when we're physically active, we produce hope molecules that are these neurotransmitters that help us to feel good. They're like legitimate feel-good molecules that are as powerful as some of the medications that people will use to feel better as well. And what's interesting about it is when you're really inactive, you don't have to go run a 10K in order to trigger those hope molecules. Just being a little more active than you were before can be enough to do it. And then the better in shape that you get, the harder you have to work in order to get that high from physical activity. But the more in shape that you are, the more able you are to do higher intensity stuff as well. So you can feel a whole lot better with someone with MTHFR who isn't very active right now by just walking and supplementing appropriately and then working on your gut health and, getting sleep. But it doesn't take a huge labor intensive program. Your life does not need to revolve around diet and exercise in order to feel better. And matter of fact, that's sometimes the worst thing that can happen is when people start to have everything revolve around their MTHFR and their, the way that they feel and that kind of thing. And then their whole lifestyle becomes pretty surrounded by just thinking about diet and exercise and supplements. But my goal is always to help people spend as little time thinking about what they have to do to be healthy as possible so that they can just go live life and enjoy the things that they enjoy and contribute and not think much about exercise or nutrition or lifestyle. So it can just start, like I said, with walking each day and maybe walking with a weighted vest when that becomes too easy, and then some simple changes to your nutrition and getting to bed on time.
I love it. Okay. Do you primarily, is this like your I noticed on your page that you speak about MTHFR almost every single day.
Mm-hmm.
So is that the majority of your client base, or does it not matter if they know that or not? It's like you're taking them through the same steps. And then if maybe you know for sure, like you might layer some things in. Like if people wanted to come find you, maybe they think MTHFR, or they know for sure, and they want to learn from you. Is that primarily who you support, or
no? That's a good question.
No.
It probably seems that way just based on the content that I'm putting out there. But when I work with a client one-on-one, like I know some practitioners they'll just get laser focused on everything's related to the gut problems. And for others, it's just sleep. And for others, it's just, you got to get on a ketogenic diet. It's the greatest thing in the world. And none of those are the ultimate thing for everybody. And so I do my best to just say, hey, yeah, I know you came here because you've got these genetic things, but I see a whole bunch of other stuff that we need to tackle first if you want to feel good. And what's going on in your genes isn't really that important compared to, the fact that you're not getting enough protein in your diet, or you're doing intermittent fasting. Like that's something that I have to undo especially for a lot of women over 40, getting them to eat breakfast and that makes them feel better, or having carbohydrates at night, which helps with serotonin production. Like there's so many things you can do, small tweaks that help you feel a lot better, but without understanding the big picture of what somebody has going on, which is what I can do in a consultation. It's hard to say like, this is the thing for you that's going to help you feel the best, the fastest.
So I'm assuming you have an online business, so you work with people all over.
I do. Yeah. All over the world. Yeah.
Okay. I love that. So it's all going to be linked in the show notes, but I always ask, where can they find you? Where's the best place? TomNikkola.com. So TomNikkola.com. And then my Instagram is @TomNikkola. So pretty simple. Perfect. This has been a really awesome conversation. I could keep picking your brain for like another hour.
Well, I'm glad that you asked me to join, Andrea.
But I'll just have to have you back on. I really appreciate your time, and I really hope that everybody goes and follows you to just like devour the incredible information that you put out there every single day. I, for one, appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for asking.
All right, guys. We'll see you soon. I am eternally grateful you tuned into The Truth About Mental Health. If this message matters to you, please spread the word by subscribing, leaving a 5-star review, and sharing with someone who needs this knowledge. Let's keep reclaiming our mental health together.